Hi guys, welcome to a new series of podcasts that I'm going to start doing, which will centre around some of the most unusual and amazing aspects of Rangers' 150 plus years history. These will sit alongside our existing podcasts where we do long form interviews with people who, majority of the time, have had a connection with Rangers in the past. But this new additional output will give us a chance to look at some of the most unusual aspects of Rangers history, as I said, in a short forum, which will be sort of 8 to 12 minutes. I'll try and aim for 10 minutes, but I can rabble on quite a bit. So the first episode, I want to look at the unusual connection between Rangers and Chelsea and look at how far back it goes. Now, if you enjoy the podcast, please give us a thumbs up. If you want to see more of them, hit the subscribe button and the little bell notification emblem, and YouTube will give you a notification when we add some more. So this connection between Rangers and Chelsea, a lot of people consider where it started and how far back it goes. And a lot of people feel it came about around about the 70s when people down south would have a second team, and that would normally be Rangers or Celtic. And during the 70s, when unfortunately the IRA decided to start bombing mainland Britain, a lot of people were put off by them, and obviously there's a connection here between Irish republicanism and Celtic. So many down south saw Rangers as a more British club and a safer option to have as a second team. So a lot of people think it started then. Some other people suggest that around about the 80s, when football hooliganism evolved into the casual scene, that it came from then. There's a couple of the top men in Chelsea at the time were ex-armed forces and had a connection with Rangers, through the Britishness of our club. But it actually goes back further than that. And I'll take you back about, let me just think, maybe about 15 years, maybe slightly more, when I was down in London on a trip, and we took in the tour of Stamford Bridge with my son. And Ben was a young lad at the time, and because we were on the west side of London, we went and visited the stadium. And it was peculiar because we were all taken into the room at the start of the tour. It was a large model of the stadium, and the tour started there with the tour guide introducing himself. And he'd obviously heard some of the accents of some of his guests that day. And he asked, I can see there's a few Scotch people. I take it you're all Rangers fans, to which we proudly put our hands up. And the tour guide, who was bizarrely named Elvis, sideburns a lot. Great guys, what a character. Before the tour even started, went on to explain his feelings on how far back this connection went. And I've since looked into it myself, and what Elvis told us that day was true. In 1904, a guy called Gus Mearns bought Stamford Bridge, which at the time was an athletics stadium. And he bought it with the view of turning into a football stadium. And he felt, because it was in Fulham, it wasn't in Chelsea, Stamford Bridge is actually in the borough of Fulham, he felt that it would be easy for him to rent that out to Fulham, who were playing at Craven Cottage at the time along the road, because if it was developed right well enough, it would give them a better proposal as a stadium. So he bought the stadium, done some work to it, and then approached Fulham to try and entice them into buying the stadium, and they didn't want to move. So he was left with this land, and there was suggestions made to him that the best thing he should do is rent it out to I think the railways at the time. They were needing a lot of extra ground, and that was certainly an option he looked at. But he settled on the idea of just starting his own football team. So bizarrely enough, Chelsea Football Club wasn't started by guys wanting to play football and then they had to go and find a stadium. It was done the completely opposite way, where this man owned a stadium, didn't come to fruition the plans he had for it, and that was renting out to somebody else. So he decided, I've got a football stadium, I may as well get a football team. So he went about forming a new football team, and he settled on the name Chelsea, which is a bit bizarre because Chelsea's actually the neighbouring borough in London. And I don't know if to try and get back at Fulham, was any of that involved in why he settled the name Chelsea, because other names were considered, like Stanford Bridge FC, London FC, things like that, but he settled on the name Chelsea, and then he needed a manager. So he looked north and enticed one of Rangers players at the time, a man called John Robertson, who had played with Rangers since 1899, and at that time the leagues were only playing 30-40 games a year, so it's no surprise that he played 101 games and not more for Rangers. But at that time, that was probably in the window that he played for Rangers, probably a guy that was, playing more games than he wasn't playing. And he was also a Scottish internationalist, was there, John? So John went down to London to become the first Chelsea manager in a player-manager capacity. And the story relayed by Elvis at the tour seems true. What he'd done, he turned up for the first training session with a kit bag, tops to wear, which were blue. And he just came from Ibrox. Can you see where we're going with this? And historians have discussed it since then, and there's no historical reference to the shade of blue that the first Chelsea kit was. However, I think it's fair to assume that, going by the colour that they have now, it was probably Rangers that influenced that. Because there was a suggestion that it could have in fact been Scotland kit that he'd taken down, because obviously that was blue, but obviously a much darker blue. And the historians therefore believe, although it's possible that it was a Scotland strip, it's probably more probable that it was Rangers strips. And Chelsea's first strips were blue top, white shorts, black socks, which rings a bell, doesn't it? There's also been suggestions that the badge that they settled on with the line rampant, very similar to the Rangers crest that evolved. However, I think we can discontinue that, because the borough of Chelsea actually have the same emblem in their borough crest. So I think it's fair to assume, and the probability is, that that's where the lion part of their crest came from, and indeed not from Rangers. But it's bizarre to think that the influence that Rangers Football Club had on the formation of a club, it went on to great things, grew into a fantastic club with some great superstars and some great achievements through time. I think London's most successful club, which with the amount of clubs you've got in London, it's quite an achievement. So there we go. The first in the series of bite-sized Rangers history facts. Chelsea Football Club wear blue because their first strip was indeed a Rangers strip. Well done, guys. Thanks very much.